father died in 1988. I was 17 years old. He was 55. I thought he robbed us, my mother, myself, his siblings, his friends, of the opportunity to properly say goodbye. I did not find out until about 2 weeks before he died. She purged the house of most of his things. Grief is the only emotion we all have to process alone. So I used to think it was the most selfish decision he could have made. And then there have been times that I think that was the most selfless decision he could have made. I said he gave his doctor permission to tell my mother. That is what he did. He didn't say it, his doctor did. He didn't tell me, my mother did. We all have these kinds of choices, right? It may not be about death specifically, but we all have situations in our life where we've got to make hard decisions. And the decision we make is something that everybody in our life is going to have to live with.
Hello, and welcome one and all to the Brick City Brown Chick YouTube show. I am your host, the aforementioned Chick. For those who ask, Brick City is Newark, New Jersey, my beloved hometown, where I was born and raised. And the Brown Chick, well, hopefully that part is obvious. On this show, we talk everything. We talk politics, we talk race, we talk music, which is my personal favorite, fashion, trends, whatever is on my mind that particular week, that is what we'll be talking about. So whether you found this page on recommendation or if you're an OG and you've been here for a while, I welcome one and all to my world, the world of the Brick City Brown Chick.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Brick City Brown Chick Show. I'm your host, the Brick City Brown Chick, and I just wanted to send a quick shout out to all the new members on the channel. There have been quite a few people who've subscribed in recent weeks, and several of them have sent me really cool messages about how much they appreciate my content and like my approach. So I want to say thank you. And I also want to thank the OGs. You have been here since the beginning, and I appreciate you as well. So thank you, everyone. This week's personal episode is called Choices. And it's called Choices because I'm going to talk about something very personal from my own life that I used to talk about a lot. And by used to, I mean like 30 years ago. I don't talk about it very much anymore because many of the people who meet me now don't know my history or don't know what's happened to me because, again, I don't really talk about it much anymore. But I wanted to talk about it on this podcast because I know lots of people go through things that I have been through. And I wanted to share what happened to me and my family and hopefully help other people get through these kinds of situations. So if you're an OG on the podcast, you know that probably almost a year ago, I did an episode about the death of my father. My father died in 1988. I was 17 years old. He was 55. He had esophagus cancer. And that's a super involved episode. It talks about all the things that happened surrounding his death. So if you're interested in that, please look at the first season of this show. I'm not going to talk about that in detail here because this is a different message. What I want to talk about is the choice my father made in terms of handling his death. And this goes to an overall conversation that Americans in general are not good at. And that's talking about death and being prepared for death as much as you can possibly be. My mother, who just turned 91, has prepared as much as she possibly can for her death. And what do I mean by that? I mean, she has a living will and a living revocable trust, and she spelled out who she wants to have what of hers when she dies. She has prepaid for her funeral, all of these things. So I, as her only child, when that time comes, will not have to be concerned with who gets what of her siblings and the bills and the expenses and the burial, all those types of things. Now, I realize people hate talking about that, but not talking about it doesn't change the fact that it's going to happen, right? We can't prevent death. The two great equalizers are aging and death. Age catches up to all of us, and eventually so does death. So it's best to prepare yourself and your family, especially if you are an older person, as much as you can. My father was not an older person. He was 55 years old. He was not in a mindset to prepare for death. But eventually, that is what he had to do on some level. We, meaning my mother and I and my family at large, do not know exactly how long my father knew he was going to die. He did not share that with anyone. Now, as a 55-year-old woman, I cannot imagine in any universe that I could walk around with the understanding and knowledge that I was going to die and not tell a soul. But that is what my father did. He had esophagus cancer, which in the late 1980s, with treatment, so if you went through the chemo and the radiation and everything that went along with that, you had about a 10% survival. So the survival rate was miserable. My father was not a person who wanted to deal with pain or with suffering. So I, now as a grown woman, understand why he made the choice he made. I understand why he chose not to tell anyone, including his wife and his daughter. But at 17, not a bit. I was so angry for such a long time. I thought he robbed us, my mother, myself, his siblings, his friends, of the opportunity to properly say goodbye. And that was brutal. It absolutely was. I'm not going to tell you that it wasn't awful, because it was awful. My mother found out he was going to die. He had been in the hospital for about 6 weeks at that point. She found out right around Christmas, which was triply horrendous, because my father's birthday was December 18th. There was Christmas, and my parents got married the day after Christmas. So my mother found out around Christmas that her husband of nearly 27 years was going to die. And she was not prepared for that, not that anyone could be, but my father had a pretty regular bout with bronchitis. And by regular, I mean practically every winter, he ended up in the hospital for a week or so with bronchitis. So her understanding was that he was suffering from a worse than usual case of bronchitis. And once he finally gave his doctor permission to tell her what it really was, he would be dead within 6 weeks. I did not find out until about 2 weeks before he died. Now, why was there a gap there? Because my mother was in pain and frankly in denial and could not process the fact that she was about to lose her husband and her child was about to lose her father. So she did not tell me. Now, my aunt, one of my mother's sisters, I guess she confided in her sister, because my aunt would start saying things to me like, if you want to know what's wrong with your father, ask him. Did I ask him? Absolutely not, because I didn't know what was going on, but I knew that I didn't want the answer to that question. So I didn't. And so 2 weeks before he died, my mother finally sat me down and said, look, this is the deal. Your father is not coming home from that hospital. And I honestly, at this point in my life, I've blocked it out, I guess, do not remember my reaction. I don't remember if I screamed. I don't remember if I fell out. I didn't faint because I'm not a fainter. That's the only thing I know didn't happen. But in terms of my actual react, I have no idea. But once he died is when the anger bubbled up, because it was clear that he knew long before we knew. And I thought that was such a selfish decision to make. But I was 17. I had no point of reference for living with that kind of information. Now, at 17, I had lost several people in my life. Both of my paternal grandfather had died when I was like 2 or 3, so I had no memory of him. His wife had died. My father's mother died many years before that, so I never met her. My mother's father died when I was 6. My mother's mother, my grandmother, died when I was 12. I had lost aunts to cancer. I had lost uncles to cancer. I had been through a lot of death by the time I was 17, unlike a lot of people. That is a double-edged sword. I will say that in some way I was better prepared because I had experienced death. But on the other hand, does part of me wish I had not experienced death so early in my life? Sure, part of me wishes that. But by 17, I had dealt with a lot of loss, but I'm not going to lie and tell you that that made me feel better or that made me cope better. It didn't. It gave me perspective that everyone dies. I understood that. I had experienced it. I had seen it. But I was in no way, shape, or form prepared to lose my father as a 17-year-old girl. Now, let me give you some backstory on where I was at that moment in my life. My father died in February. It was my senior year of high school. So I had sent out all my college applications and I was waiting for them all to come back. And sometime in like mid-January, I had visited my father in the hospital and we were talking. And I went to an all-girl high school. Both of my parents were public school teachers. They thought the public schools in New Jersey would eat me alive. So they sent me to an all-girl Catholic high school, which I was not thrilled about, but it was what it was. And so my father had always said that his job as my dad was to keep me away from boys as long as possible. That was his philosophy about it. So I was visiting him and we were talking and he said, so you applied to Spelman, right? We're going to an all-women's college. And I was just shaking my head and looking at him and saying, I'm sorry, Dad, you're going to have to forgive pardon my French is a phrase we used to use when we were about to curse. Like, you're going to have to pardon my French, Dad, but only if hell's freezing over. Like, I am not going to an all-women's college. I've spent 4 years with a bunch of girls. I'm done. Had it, not doing it. So when he died, I was waiting for my decision letters from colleges. We always had a father-daughter dance at our school, which he had gone with me to in years past. That was coming. The prom was coming, graduation was coming, going off to college was coming. And I would not have my father for any of those things. And so that did not help the anger, right? It didn't at all. I got to college. I was an angry, lonely, insecure, just turned 18-year-old girl. And so the beginning of my college experience was a whole lot of extra on top of all the stuff you go through when you first go away to school. It's your first time away from home. You have to do your own laundry. You have to make sure you get to the cafeteria during the time that the cafeteria is open. You have to study. You have to all these things. On top of all that regular stuff, I was also dealing with my father's death and my reaction to it. My mother and I handled his death very different. My mother is a very, I don't want to say she's not emotional because that's not accurate. She's just a lot less emotional than I am. I wear my heart on my sleeve person. That is not at all who my mother is. So the way she handled her anger towards my father, because she had her own anger to deal with, was the week he died, she purged the house of most of his things. She gave away his clothes. She dragged his recliner, which was in our living room, out of the house, down the stairs, onto the curb. And I'm standing there watching this with my aunts thinking, she's snapped. She's totally snapped. We tried to help her. She wouldn't let us touch it. She was broken. And I was broken. But we were not broken together because, as I always say, grief is the only emotion we all have to process alone. You can have group joy, you can have group happiness, you can be at a wedding, you can be at a christening, you can do all that together. But everyone handles grief differently. So my mother mourned, she got a second job, and then she got a third job. That is how she coped. She didn't want to be in the house. She didn't want to be alone. 6 months before, she had a husband and a daughter living in this house. Now her husband was dead and her daughter was 6 hours away. So she didn't want to be home. So she got more jobs. I threw myself into school and really did try to focus. But the thing about grief is if you bury it, it will come back. It never goes away. You just bury it. You stuff it down because you don't want to deal with it. But that doesn't mean it goes anywhere. So as I went through college, I had to go through therapy and learn to cope and learn to deal. And so over the course of my life, in the 35 years or so since he's been gone, I have had a lot of time, obviously, to process the decision he made and the choice he made. And I've had to have a few come to Jesuses with myself about how I feel about that. I now understand as a fully grown woman that he made the best choice he could based on the circumstances. Is it a choice I would have made? Absolutely not. Is it a choice I would make now? Absolutely not. I would tell everybody I know. But I think now about the strength and the determination that it took to keep that to himself. I could never do it. I absolutely know that. And people I've told this story to are just like, yeah, I couldn't do that either. So I used to think it was the most selfish decision he could have made. And then there have been times that I think that was the most selfless decision he could have made. At this point in my life, I probably come down somewhere in the middle. He did not want to have to face my mother, or me for that matter, and have to sit us down and tell us that. I said he gave his doctor permission to tell my mother. That is what he did. He didn't say it, his doctor did. He didn't tell me, my mother did. because he didn't want to deal with it. Having to come to terms with your own mortality is difficult for people in their 80s, in their 90s. Someone in their 50s, a person who was the age I am now, I cannot imagine. But that's the choice he made. And what I'm here to say is that we all have these kinds of choices, right? It may not be about death specifically, but we all have situations in our life where we've got to make hard decisions. And the decision we make is something that everybody in our life is going to have to live with. And that's not easy, but it's what we have to do because we're human. And there are going to be times where we're going to have to make the best decision we can with the information we have. And not everybody's going to be happy about it. They're going to have to deal with it, but they're not going to be happy about it. So what I want to tell everybody who's in a circumstance where they have to make a tough choice, just know that you will make the best decision that you can, and that other people's feelings and reactions to your decision are what they are. I won't say they're none of your business. They're clearly your business. But you've got to roll with those punches and understand that over time, those people will come to accept your decision, come to understand your decision, or come not to understand it. They may be mad about it for the rest of their life and mad at you. But that's just the reality of life. That's just one of those complexities about being human, is living with our choices. I want to thank everybody for joining me this week, and I'll see you again next week. Take care.